Okay, in this module, we're going to look at some of the most common issues in grammar, mostly dealing with sentence structure. I realize this is not technically a grammar course, but this is a writing course, and so I thought it would be useful to go through some of the most common issues in grammar that I see with my students. So we're going to go over 4 basic grammar topics. The first we're going to start in this video, which is identifying subjects and verbs. Next, we're going to move on to identifying and correcting fragments. Then we'll talk about identifying and correcting run-ons. And then finally, we'll take a look at subject-verb agreement. But first, let's talk about subjects and verbs. Now, the very basic building blocks of English sentences are subjects and verbs. It's a very useful skill to be able to easily identify the subject and verb in a sentence. The next sections that we talk about, fragments and run-ons, it's going to be crucial that you can quickly identify the subject and verb of a sentence in order to identify a fragment or a run-on. Now, every sentence has a subject and a verb. If it's missing one or the other, it's what we call a fragment. Now, who or what the sentence speaks about is what we call the subject, and what the sentence says about that subject is called the verb. Here's a very simple sentence that we can take apart and look at the subject and verb. The children laughed. Now, a simple way to find the subject is simply to ask yourself, who or what is this sentence about? Well, in this case, the answer to that is the children. So children is your subject. A simple way to find the verb is to ask yourself, what does this sentence say about the subject? And the answer here is, they laughed. So laughed is the verb. Now, unfortunately, not all sentences are so simple. Over the next few videos, we're going to take a look at the rules for identifying the subjects and verbs of more complicated sentences. Now, we're going to go over 7 rules. Not all in this video, it's going to be over the next few videos, and along the way we're going to stop and practice some of those rules as we move through them. Now, the first rule to keep in mind is that a pronoun can serve as the subject of a sentence. Pronouns include he, she, it, we, you, they. Sometimes students skip over pronouns in search of a noun when they're looking for the subject. It's like the pronoun isn't a real word. Well, it is, and it can serve as the subject. I have a couple of examples for you. He seems like a shy young man. Well, in this case, he is the subject of the sentence. And you see underlined, I have the subject underlined, and the double underline is the verb. I'm going to use that method of identifying subjects and verbs throughout the rest of the video. We enjoy visiting casinos on the weekend. So we is the subject, even though it's a pronoun, it's still the subject, and enjoy is the verb. All right, let's move on to the second rule. A sentence can have more than one verb. It can have more than one subject. It can even have several subjects and verbs. So let's take a look at some examples of how that happens. My dog ran and jumped. Who is that sentence about? A dog. So dog is our subject. Ran and jumped is what the sentence is saying about the subject. My wallet and phone were stolen by the pickpocket. So I've got 2 subjects here, the wallet and the phone, because the sentence is about both. And the verb here is they were stolen. John and Katie prepared for the project together and presented it to the committee. Here's an example where we have more than one subject and more than one verb. We have John and Katie. They are both the subject of the sentence. And they did 2 things. The sentence says 2 things about John and Katie. They prepared the project together and they presented it to the committee. Okay, well, in the next video, we're going to look at some more rules for identifying subjects and verbs.